Let's do a quick TARDIS Builders FAQ for anyone who might be interested in building their own TARDIS. So I think it'll be like a TARDIS panel, but there's no one in the audience.
I love it.
So what do you, I think one of the first questions people are going to ask is, how much does it cost?
It's a great question.
And I'll tell you, my answer is the same answer I give anytime someone says, how much does an R2 cost? I say, how much does a car cost?
Yeah. Which I think is fair. I think, you know, you can give a date, like a price range, but I think it's very difficult to say, like, you know, what does it light up? Like, you know, what kind of wood are you using? Where are you? Is it going to be indoors? Is it outdoors?
It's going to be, you know, I've done a lot of research on YouTube about other people's TARDIS builds, and you and I have very specific criteria for our build. In fact, one of the things we did early on is we sat down and we actually documented what we wanted our builds to be like. We wrote our list of requirements.
Which I maintain has been like one of the more helpful things that we've done in this process, was actually like building our requirements doc.
Yeah.
And separating it into, you know, like these are our requirements, these are nice to haves.
Yeah. And we also set like phases, like things we wanted to build in certain order, blah, blah, blah. But like I've seen guys on YouTube who like take, you know, old pallets they found out in the woods and, you know, nail them together and make walls, and, you know, you can probably make one out of paper mache if you want to. So it really depends entirely on where your skill set lies, what tools you have, and how you want your TARDIS to look. We happen to be going for very accurate looking Matt Smith TARDISes. Like, we want it to look like someone went to set, stole a Matt Smith TARDIS, and put it in our garage. I mean, there's a ton of different ways to skin a cat. Yeah. So it's very difficult to say. I will say, I think you'd be very hard pressed to get away without spending $500.
Yeah.
Even if it was just all materials.
Yeah, I think that is the bare minimum, and that doesn't like. I mean, I'd still worry about like, well, I mean, I guess like you've got your sign boxes, your you know, your pull to open sign. There's a lot of hardware and things that you need to worry about. And again, like it all depends on accuracy.
Right.
Yeah, it really depends on accuracy.
Like if you just want something that people recognize as a TARDIS, MDF, foam core, plywood.
I've seen people do just like a printout and a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper for the pull to open.
Yeah, sure.
Sign.
So the punchline is you can spend probably as little as you want, or you could spend a few $1,000s, especially if you don't have any tools or friends you can borrow them on. So totally varies. Okay, another question I hear a lot is, whose plans are you using?
Answer? Well, we're kind of...
I would say well, first of all, a huge shout out to Mr. Philip Wise. Philip's a friend who lives in Texas, I believe. He runs the website rebelscum.com. Super great guy, very creative, very talented, and extremely generous in documenting what has to be the absolute best TARDIS build. Not only the best TARDIS build, but the best documentation. Yeah. No disrespect to other TARDIS builders. Maybe you've got better. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. His is pretty much the definitive Matt Smith build. Yeah. And not only has his thread been incredibly helpful, but he has been super generous with his time afterwards, helping us out. And
I'll post a link in the comments section if you want to see it on the RPF, the Replica Props Forum. So in Philip's first post on that forum, he includes a PDF of his drawing of the front face of the TARDIS. It is not one-to-one, but it has a measurement. It has the base measurement of 60 inches. So what I did is I took that into Adobe Illustrator, scaled it up to 1-to-1, and then what I do is I just pull measurements directly off that. There are some parts, you know, it's just the front face, so you kind of have to think three-dimensionally a lot of times and extrapolate. But that's what I'm using as my reference. Is it 100% accurate? I have no idea. I have no idea what the actual measurements of the real TARDIS are. But having seen Philip's in person, and comparing it to whatever, screen captures or pictures or publicity photos, it looks amazing.
Well, I think when people say they're looking for plans, they really want a like kind of an instruction manual on how to build a TARDIS. And you know, there is a fairly good one available on the TARDIS Builders forum, but I think it refers more to like a vintage TARDIS box than any of the more modern ones. And even then, like, it's not like a, you know, step by step, like, you know, you're building a model out of Lego kind of thing. There's still like a lot of work that you need to do on your own. Like kind of, it's very much a problem-solving exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you don't like problem solving, or you're not a creative thinker,
yeah, this is not for you.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's not building a Lego set. Like, in fact, like saying we only have that face drawing and we have Philip's step by step, or not really step by step, but he definitely goes into detail. Like, you're still, even with that, you are still faced with an endless series of challenges that you need to solve using the tool set you have available and the skills you have on hand. So
right, one of which being the inconsistencies of wood that we were mentioning earlier, which causes just all kinds of problems for us.
That's another great question. What kind of wood are we using?
What kind of wood are you using?
Well, let me preface this by saying you and I have different goals.
Mm-hmm.
Our requirements are different. My TARDIS will be an indoor TARDIS. I don't have a yard. I live in a condo. I don't have a backyard, and I want it to go in my living room because I'm like that. Ewan, on the other hand,
mine is intended to be my garden shed. I have a yard. I have things I would like to put in a shed. And one of the conditions on my wife letting me do this was
we love you, Angel.
We do. The TARDIS becomes our garden shed. So I have a lot of different requirements. We just around while trying to talk.
I'm trying to do
the
important
stuff, man.
I'm trying to do the hard.
You know what? You're sandbagging.
No, because
I have important things to say.
I can do it if it's facing me.
You done?
Yeah. Quite. Go ahead.
So with our different goals comes different wood, and there's certain types of wood that are Matt, you're using pine for yours. Great choice. Really easy to work with. Nice sharp edges. Cheap. Doesn't do well outdoors.
No, not at all.
Your TARDIS will be gone in like a year or two, were you to have like the pine outdoors. Even if you have it like painted and sealed.
It will. By the way, I don't know if that number's right, but it became
all facts.
Because we hear different things
true.
From different people. Like I've heard people say, well, if you primer it and paint it and seal it, it will last. It could last for years.
Yeah, and then you say, well, how many years? And they're like,
yeah.
Yeah, and then also like somebody's like, oh yeah, no, if you want it to last, you need to paint all of the pieces before you even do anything to them. It's been incredibly inconsistent. Like everything we found with this project, inconsistency is the only constant.
Yeah. Exactly.
So for my build, I've been using pretty much a mix of redwood and Douglas fir, for both of which are really great for outdoors. They both last pretty well. Redwood is particularly good at repelling insects, but is a little bit more expensive. The Doug fir has a slightly nicer grain to it, which is one of the more important aspects of the Massman TARDIS. So that's been my experience. And again, even with like the plywood for the walls and the floor and things like that, you're able to get away with a slightly cheaper grade of plywood because you don't need to worry about it soaking up a lot of water.
Right.
I have to find something that's marine grade that will do well for exteriors. It's been treated. And again, that is slightly harder to find, a little bit more expensive, but it means that the TARDIS is going to last a little bit longer.
Yeah. And that's sort of another scenario where we're walking a line between price versus availability versus longevity.
Yeah.
Like we could easily spend a ton more and get really, really nice hardwoods and it'll last a ton longer. But the price of wood is interesting. Like if you go to Home Depot and you buy their, I don't even know what this is called, but it's basically the junk wood. It's not junk, it's just sort of the low end wood. And like one plank, for example, might cost you $6. And then you go across the aisle, and for a little bit like a choice pine, it'll be like $12 or $18. So like 3 times more in price. But then if you go to look at like a mo better wood, it's like $8 a foot.
Right.
So like the price of wood, like if you want good wood, and who doesn't? It gets really, really, really expensive. So, I just want a TARDIS that's made out of wood. It doesn't need to be frickin' awesome trick wood. Trick, is that a thing?
Trick wood, yeah.
So I think that's
actually knew a guy called Trick Wood.
That's a good name. Was he an adult film star?
Street magician.
I believe that.